why would you buy a cheap concentrate overseas when you can get real fruit here and you can treat your own people right? We've always brought out a local product with freshly ingredients, nicely tasting and low in sugars.
The things that you've done around like the fonts and the presentation of the logo, there's all these things that to me I interpret it as playful, like it feels playful and fresh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was the thinking behind the brand when you first got started a decade ago?
Well, we are very honest and straightforward and open, and we're basically a fun bunch here, and that's also what we wanted to portray.
A fun bunch. So, and how did you know what was going to be the? Did you go through like a design process, or was this all done in-house?
Peter does everything in-house. It is so he's very creative, and so he comes up with the ideas. But then we have a designer put it on labels and work everything out as needed. But he's pretty creative, and we just wanted to be more fun, not too serious.
And Pete's Natural is the product, but also Pete's Natural it's Pete, right? Like that's the person behind it. And looking on your website, your contact info is Mrs. Pete. So are you Mrs. Pete?
I am.
What type of emails do you get when it says Mrs. Pete? What's the
I changed that maybe only about a year or 2 years ago, and very often I get like, "Hi, Mrs. Pete. Oh, I like this idea," and those kind of things. It's usually very well perceived. Not everybody sees it either, though, but some people do.
I think there's far more details that probably I've even seen. Just looking at your website, there were a couple of things around, where to find us. And then inside the box it says, "Get me some Pete's." There's just these little subtle design details, those touch points. Yeah. What are some of the ones that I wouldn't see because I'm not with you now in Motueka, or that I wouldn't see of how you present it in cafes, for example?
Yeah. One thing, and that's changed now, but for our website, when you used to go to our website, the cursor would change into a lemon. But that changed now because that caused some issues, but that was a fun thing too. How we present is also the main thing is that we want to show that we're natural, that we use all local fruit. We try to keep everything, all the details very similar, and we pay a lot of attention to detail. And also, like, for example, we have a couple cars too, and they're all wrapped in Pete's Natural story. So that's another thing, how people see us and they all go like, "Oh, there's that car," because it really catches the eye. So
And in terms of the flavors, there's quite a range now. I count maybe 10 or 11. What were the first flavors, and when did you know that you had a hit on your hands with those flavors?
The first flavor was our lemonade, and that was received really well right away, because that's basically also one of the ways how it started, because we were making it at home and for ourselves, and at some point we had made too much, and then we also gave some to neighbors, and they go like, "Oh, this is so good, you need to go commercial with it." And that's one of the starting points. And then we started to look around, and there's so much fruit in the area that just falls on the ground because the growers don't get a decent price for the fruit if it's not export grade. And that's why we said, well, if we want to do this, we want to do this with all local fruit. We don't want to use anything from overseas. And in some way that limits us a little bit in regards to our flavors, of course, because we don't want to use fruit that's not grown in New Zealand. But on the other hand, you support the local growers. We call it fair trade at home. Every dollar that gets spent with us stays within New Zealand. And I think that's also very important. And especially now, more and more people are really interested in supporting local. And for us, it's not just us that you support, but you support also our employees and everyone else that we use as suppliers within New Zealand. And I think that's a very, very important point.
So when someone buys a Pete's Natural lemonade or an orange berry or a limonade, they're supporting not just your organisation and employees, but the actual growers of the fruit.
Yep.
Where are some of the places around New Zealand that you source the fruit from?
Yeah, so a lot of the fruit comes from the local area. So from the top of the south, a lot of our citrus comes from here. But then we also have limes, lemons, oranges from Gisborne, Kirikiri, Hawke's Bay. So wherever they're grown in New Zealand, we do have a couple local suppliers in Takeka and here in the Mutri. But other than that, a lot of it is from the rest of the country. And if it comes from Kirikiri or Gisborne, we'll call it that it comes from overseas. That's a little bit of a pun.
Because it's just that far away from you.
Yeah. Well, we need to cross the water, don't we?
When a new product comes to market, how do you know that New Zealand's ready for that taste or that flavour? Like I look on here and on your site, there's also a hemp in Manuka or a lemon in Manuka. When do you decide, hey, it's time to add a new product to the Pete's range? Yeah,
that's Peter keeps an eye on local trends and everything what's happening around us. And of course, a lot of people, like when we started about 10 years ago, we brought out the drink as it is now. So we didn't change the recipe to go lower in sugar or anything. So we've always brought out a local product with freshly ingredients, nicely tasting and low in sugars, with no added chemicals, preservatives, additives, anything like that. And 10 years ago, we were actually pioneers in there because you couldn't really find any low sugar drinks. And that's how we keep an eye on things. And like you see, more and more people are looking for even healthier still now, and they don't want any added sugar. And that's why we started exploring with Manuka honey. And then, of course, hemp was becoming a trend. And that's why we tried to make a drink with it. And actually, we tried several hemp drinks from other companies, and we couldn't really find anything that we really liked. But all our drinks are based on citrus, and the citrus with the hemp gives it a really nice flavor. And yeah, that's how we got started on that one. And then we increased the range with lemon Manuka Switchel, because Switchel was becoming quite popular. And then lately, I think maybe about 6 months ago, we launched beetroot Manuka. And again, because beetroot is something that a lot of people do like, and it works really well.
I think to launch so early with some of those attributes, to decide to be no preservatives, no additives, and less than 5% sugar in the bottle, and choosing not refined sugar but raw sugar, decisions like that, to me, 10 years ago, that's almost the opposite of what the big companies were doing back then, with the very high sugar levels. And now it's kind of obvious that sugar's seen as more of a bad guy than it was. How did you deal with the feedback, not necessarily from consumers, but from the cafes and places that they've got a product that probably tastes very different to what their customers are used to? How did you help educate the market along the journey?
Yeah, that's the right word about it, is education. So you really definitely need to educate people about that. But most people, because we started out very local, and because you're local, it's also a little easier. You can also talk to them easier, you can show them things, and a lot of people really like the idea of a lower sugar drink. But the main thing for us to concentrate on was that it was local, fresh fruit. So we don't use any concentrates, no artificial colors, flavors, preservatives. And because of that, we can also get away with less sugar, because you get a real nice fruit flavor. So it doesn't need to be so sweet. And yes, indeed, it's very different. And some people don't like it, of course, because they like just the sweetness of the drinks. And that's okay, because everybody needs to earn a dollar, I'd say.
And so I'm assuming you're in quite a few stores and retail outlets now. Where does the wholesale growth come from? Is it still very domestic focused, or is there an export component that you're looking at or currently doing?
Yeah, it's still very domestic because there's still lots of room to grow within New Zealand. But we also started exporting about a year and a half ago to Australia. We've exporting to Hong Kong also, and at the moment we're looking into Thailand and other Asian countries. Wow. So yeah, we're definitely working on that, but there is still a lot of ground to cover within New Zealand too.
It is a big market here, and it's certainly easier to work at home and win markets at home, because then you can build off that.
Yes, definitely.
Overseas.
Yeah.
You mentioned before fair trade at home. I think a lot of people in the audience for the podcast will be, they'll understand what fair trade is internationally, helping organizations that treat employees right. What's your definition of fair trade at home with Pete's Natural?
For us, fair trade at home means that we look after our own people first. Like I say, most of the fruit used to be rotting on the ground because if it's not export grade, the growers don't get much money for it, and then it's not worth picking. And we think that's really waste. Plus also looking after the land is important for us too. And then of course, like I said before, like all the money that gets spent for us stays within the community, within New Zealand. Nothing that you spend with us goes overseas. And we think that it's very important too, that everybody is claiming fair trade, which is all good and well. But why would you buy a cheap concentrate, because that's where it comes to, overseas, when you can get real fruit here and you can treat your own people right? And I think that is the first step. They always say when you want to change the world, start with yourself. So why don't we start just with New Zealand and make sure that everybody here gets a fair price for what they're growing or what they're making?
I love that. And I've just as you were talking there, I was thinking about what would it mean to actually measure that, that commitment that you make when you're sourcing within New Zealand. I wonder what positive ripple effects that has for the local economy because you're supporting New Zealand growers.
Yeah, we have never measured that, of course, but that is definitely something worthwhile, I'd say. And it's not just only measuring that, but yeah, there's a lot of things that come with it. One negative thing for us is that our cost of ingredients is higher. But we think for a quality product, you really need to consider that, because I think it's very important to really look after our own first.
Particularly when the product can be used in other ways. I was seeing on your site that some people or bars will use it as a mixer.
Yes.
And I know within that area, the mixer is actually 90% of what you're drinking. So having a higher quality as you can get, the better.
And that's where we need to get the bars to change their mind, because at the moment, a lot of it for the bars is they go with a high quality alcohol, but then they go with a cheap base, like a cola or a Sprite or whatever. They don't want to spend much money on there, and that needs to change. But that's a work in progress, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think it is a big education curve. It's like buying a Ferrari but putting the cheapest tires on it you could find.
Yep.
You're not getting the full effect for your customer.
And that's one thing that we're now also starting to work on, to give our customers more recipes to make cocktails and all of that, so that they see that that's also a good use of our product.
So for someone who's listening thinking, actually I want to try this as a mixer for a cocktail, you've got on your site something like the mixed crate. What are some of the flavors that you get to put in there, and what would you recommend for the cocktail side of things?
So at the moment, if people buy a mixed crate, we put just something of everything in there, unless they specify really what they want. But we're also working on getting either a mixed box or a mixed crate on there, which we'll call the cocktail crate. And that one, we're thinking mainly the lemonade, the blackcurrant, the limonade, and the lemon chili. Now I hope it doesn't start raining too much harder because it might interrupt things.
I can hear it lightly in the background, but that's
okay, that's good.
you're the first to have a corrugated iron roof and have it raining. There's nothing more Kiwi
Yeah.
than that, Marleen.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, I think with the crate, the mixed crate, coming into Christmas season as we are now, what a great thing to either put under the tree or give as a gift when you're going round to someone else's house.
Yeah.
This can become a bit of a talking point. Most people will have a bar in their home or have a couple of celebratory bottles, but this could just be a nice tweak for it.
Yeah, and we've had in the past too, we've had companies give the crates to their employees or to their other relations as a crate with our drinks because it's a nice gift and people can still use the crates afterwards too. So it's, for anything basically.
And that's probably another area I haven't touched on that we should, is the sustainability side of the business. Talk me through some of the decisions you've made there and the thinking behind it.
Yeah, so sustainability for us, that's another part why we source everything in New Zealand to keep our footprint low. Our glass also comes from Auckland and it's made from up to 70% recycled glass.
Wow.
So all our other ingredients other than sugar, because we don't grow sugar in New Zealand, so the sugar we get from fair trade, from Trade Aid. And it's also a fair trade raw sugar. So again, we still put that through. We still use fair trade overseas, but we look after our own first. The honey is sourced local, so everything we can, we source local. We make sure that our footprint keeps low in everything that we do. About 2 years ago, we had to purchase a new vehicle and we made that an electric vehicle. And just about six or 8 months ago, we also put solar panels on the roof of the factory, again for sustainability, to try and help for the environment.
That's fantastic. I think if all businesses can just do a little bit, then together it shifts the needle in a way that no one single business can solve it, but together it's
that's true. All together, Mm-hmm.
Now, with your accent, Marleen, I'm picking up, and I'm going to make a guess here. I might be completely wrong, but I'm guessing it's a Dutch accent. Have I got that right?
Very close. Belgium.
Belgium, right.
Yeah.
And did you grow up in New Zealand or in Belgium?
No, we grew up, Peter is also from Belgium. We grew up in Belgium. We moved from Belgium when we were about 30. And then we moved to the US for 9 years. And then we moved here to New Zealand. And New Zealand is home.
What made you stop the boat when you got to New Zealand?
Well, just, I don't know. Peter had always, I think he was only 12 years old when he went to the embassy in Belgium, the Australian embassy. And he went to ask what he needed to do to move to Australia. And they just said, go home, go see your mom. So it's been in him for a long time. And when we were in the US, we were there on a business visa. And the US is very strict on there. At the moment you sell your business, you need to go the very next day, basically. So our girls were teenagers and we didn't think it was the right place to grow up there either. So at that point we said, well, New Zealand looks very good. And Peter is a baker. There was a bakery for sale here in Napier. And we moved there. But then the bakery was not for sale anymore when we got there. So things changed. And then we had a bakery here in Richmond. And in the meantime, we started the lemonade. And at some point we had to choose one or the other. And we chose for the lemonade business.
So that gave you the entry into New Zealand as entrepreneurs with the bakery side of it. That gave the cash flow to start getting the beverage business up and running. Because that's the hard part, isn't it? Is you've got a bit of time. Because it's an economy of scale business, isn't it?
It is an economy of scale, yeah. So we've started it, we've done pretty much everything on a shoestring, and it's still on a shoestring, but we are getting more and more traction. And it's really, especially now in the last 6 months, if everybody got a hit, of course, with COVID, there was 2 months with basically no income. But then after that, we're actually growing really well because, New Zealanders stay at home and everybody is more about supporting local, and we're really focusing on that, and it seems to work really well for us.
There certainly has been a shift to support local, and through that lockdown period where people couldn't shop in their normal places, turning to online. And I think it's been quite a surprise for a number of the manufacturers of just how much business is now happening online. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens over Christmas. Do people revert to walking down the main streets, or do they continue with e-commerce and getting things delivered?
Yeah. I think people are starting to see the advantage too of the deliveries, because otherwise you need to lug everything from the store and get it from your car to the house, and now everything gets delivered on your doorstep. You basically can shop from your couch, which for a lot of people it's actually very convenient. Also, if you have a full-time job and you after work you need to go shopping, and now it just gets dropped off at your door, it's very convenient and also time saving.
Completely. I know with my mum, she loves to get things delivered to the door for shopping when it comes to bottles and things, because she doesn't have to put it in the back of the car, lift it out again into the garage and then into the house. It's much easier, and for that retiree market, I actually think it's underserved. And I know that once she tries a product and likes it, it's on subscription.
They'll stick with it.
And it's the perfect type of revenue for a business. Where do you find your new customers? Is there is it mostly relying through the cafes and those retail outlets where you get to taste it for the first time?
What we used to do is we used to do a lot of events and shows for that, so that the end consumer could taste our product before they would buy it. But we stepped away from that about a year ago because it was just taking us away from, well, you're still working on the business, but it was still taking us away from our factory and the office here too much. And we also like to spend some time at home. So now we're trying other avenues, especially like social media. We've upped that a lot to make that work more. We've also just switched to active campaign to try and do better with our newsletters and prospecting. And then for new wholesale customers, we travel around the country and also do cold calling. And that also seems to work quite well because we see a pretty steady and good growth.
It's a good mix. I'm glad that you've got the phone calls in there. I think in an age where we're all used to doing the news feed scrolling, getting a phone call is a very rare thing. I got one yesterday, a cold call from a previous advertiser, and we chatted about COVID and the 2020 that's been for 30-40 minutes, and that reconnected the two of us. And before I knew it, I was thinking about placing an ad for 2021.
There you go. That's good. Yeah. Sometimes it's good to talk to people, but that is kind of hard sometimes for us because cafes they usually don't have a lot of time, so there's a very limited time windows that we can call because you really need to watch out when they're busy that you can't do that. Lunchtime, morning tea, after 2 or 3 o'clock, most of the time the managers are gone, so there's really only small windows that we can call, but we fill that up also with email and text, and we make it work.
I think text is another underutilized one by New Zealand brands, because you can use that transactional side of things, like we're packing your order has left the factory, your order is in the all of those are other touch points that help consumers be part of a process that they can't be in a physical retail environment. E-commerce changes those touch points.
Yeah, they do.
Marleen, is there any question or area that I haven't asked you or any area that you would like to cover that I should have asked?
No, I think that is like our focus mainly is on the fair trade at home and getting people to know our story, what's different about it and why we do it. Because we're not just doing it because it's something different, but there's big reasons behind it. And that supporting local is very, very important, because it's not just for us, but it's for the whole community, and it gives back to the whole community. Other things that we're doing too is we help with fundraising. So a lot of requests we get for fundraising, of course, can you donate a prize and those kind of things. So we, of course, always help with donating prizes, but we also developed a plan that we have fundraiser bottles to sell, and we sell them at a discounted rate for them. And then they can sell them at the event, and all the proceeds can go to them.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and that seems to, there's like, for example, here local, we have the Natimoti school. They always do a huge fundraiser each year, and they used to make their own lemonade and sold it in cups. But then I think it's 2 or 3 years ago, they started to see the benefit of us being able to provide it, because they didn't need to put the effort in. It was a steady and stable product. They didn't need to worry about any of that, and they still could make good profits. And the last 2 years, their sales are only going up and up in the drinks. So that's a way that we can help. We're also like on the weekend, and not 100% sure if it's going to happen now, but there's a local AMP show here, and we plan on doing having a stall there, but not to sell our product, but we're planning on setting up a game, and then for a gold donation, and we would donate that to a charity. So instead of being there just as selling our product, still being out in the community, but helping out other communities and other fundraiser events, those kind of things, to help them raise money.
Those are both great initiatives. I particularly like you're taking away the making process to do the lemonade stand if you're a kid, but if the kid really, the fun part, or half of the fun, is seeing if people will buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and counting the money part of it. That's fantastic. I appreciate your time today, Marleen. We could probably talk all day about Pete's Lemonade and the flavors and the origin story of the business. I appreciate you sharing so generously on a Kiwi original. And congratulations both to you and to Pete for building this company in New Zealand over the last decade, and putting in the hard yards in, probably at times where you're doing that on your own, out of the limelight, and now your products just right on time.
Yeah. There's one other thing that maybe it's good to touch on that too, is about, so in the beginning we had other companies contract bottle for us, but of course that came with all the issues of reliability and quality, and not always what and where and when we wanted it. And about 5 years ago, we set up our own bottling facility here in Motueka. And that also gave us a lot more flexibility. So now we can keep our stock lower if needed, or up our stock when we need it. And also we can do unique trials, like, for example, the lemon chili that we do. We would have never been able to do that anywhere else, because we need an extra person on the line, and it's manual. We manually put a chili in each single bottle. Yeah. So those kind of things really were only possible because of having our own factory. And there again, helping out others was also one of our points that we really wanted to try and work out, because there's a lot of small companies just like us that if they need to go have their product bottled, well, it's too hard to set up for yourself, too expensive. If you had to have it bottled somewhere, it's usually too big of a runs for startups. So we provide small runs, which way we can help people getting established, and we're very picky on quality. So that's another thing, that the product they get from us is always up to spec. And that was another thing for us, that we really wanted to help other people in the same industry.
That's great, because it gives that whole, gives the business the leg up to start with, and to focus on the flavor and the quality, knowing that they've got a partner they can trust.
Yeah. And also, like, a lot of people see each other as competitors, which is true. We are competitors in a way, but we see each other much more as colleagues, and we want to see if we just find and try to find ways to work together more, because we find it more important to come forward as like healthy companies and helping for Kiwis to eat and drink healthy instead of fighting each other for a little part of the market. And that doesn't always work for everybody, but we're trying our best to see how can we help each other to make a bigger impact.
That is so insightful, and I think you can certainly be proud and I think confident of that approach. That's worked for the wine sector. Sharing bottling facilities or storage facilities, even having vineyards that don't have their own vines. They get, the vines picked and the grapes come in and they've got a vineyard with no vines. You can collaborate as an ecosystem. You still need to have, your own brand, but there are opportunities for collaboration, I think, within the drinks for healthy drinks versus unhealthy drinks, or
yes, definitely
certain groups, and that can get you both volume, but also get your unit price down and that then gets you into an entirely new market collectively.
Yep, definitely. Yep, there just needs to be some more collaboration. So,
well, good luck on that road, and it reminds me, I've got to try the chili drink. I haven't tried that yet. Do you have any tips on how long that you can keep it to get the chili spice up?
Yeah, so the flavor, the heat comes from the chili only. We don't add anything else. So it's our regular lemonade with the chili, but we have ways to extract the heat from the chili. And it takes about at least 3 to 6 weeks to get the heat in there. So we always need to be ahead of time and make sure that we have enough stock on hand. We've been caught out a couple times, but it gets to its maximum heat probably at about 6 months. But anywhere between the time that we should ship it out, between the 6 weeks and the 6 months, it's usually really good. And once it reaches that 6 months, it won't get any hotter. And when you first try it, the first sip is a bit hot, but you just, need to persevere. And the more you drink, the easier it gets to drink. And it's a really, really nice base for a cocktail.
Very smart indeed. Really appreciate your time today, Marleen.